Welcome back. So we're ready to set up enhanced input for our project. I'm going to go to my crash course folder, and in here, I'm going to create an input folder. So all of our input assets will go here, and I'm going to start by creating my input mapping context for movement. Now, I can right-click and go to Input and choose Input Mapping Context, and I'm going to have two input mapping contexts. The first will be for basic movement, so I'm going to call this IMC movement. Later, when we have abilities, I'm going to have a separate input mapping context to handle input for our abilities specifically. Now, we need some actions to go in our IMC movement mapping context, so I'm going to make a new folder called Movement Actions. And we'll have three basic movement actions. The first will be for jumping. So I'm going to right-click, go to Input, and select Input Action, and I'm going to call this IA Jump, and I'm going to leave it at its default settings, which is that it has value type digital bool, so it's either on or off. We'll go ahead and close that, and I can create another input action. So Input, Input Action. This one's going to be IA Look. This will be for moving the mouse and rotating our camera view. And I'm going to open this one and change its value type to Axis 2D, Vector 2D, as it will handle X and Y axis for mouse movement. I'm going to create a third input action called IA Move, and this one also will be Axis 2D, Vector 2D, as it's going to handle two axes. Forward and backward is one axis, left and right is the other. So now that I have these actions, I can go ahead and close those. I'm going to close my player character blueprint for now. And I'm going to go back into my input folder and open IMC movement and add my three input actions. So I'm going to click on plus next to mappings and choose IA Jump and expand it and click on the select key value icon and hit the spacebar so that the spacebar will trigger IA Jump. I'm going to add another mapping, and for this one, I'm going to choose IA Look, and this one is going to handle mouse movement. So I'm going to open the dropdown, go to Mouse, and choose Mouse XY 2D axis, and the default behavior is the opposite of what I want for moving my mouse up and down. So I'm going to negate that axis by going to Modifiers, clicking plus, and choosing a negate modifier and expanding that three-dimensional array and unchecking X and Z so that we're only negating the Y-axis of our mouse movement. That's going to handle IA Look. I'm going to add a third input action, and for the third one, I'm going to select IA Move, and I'm going to expand it. We'll go ahead and collapse Jump and Look for now. And for IA Move, I'm going to bind four different keys, the WASD keys. So I'm going to select the first one and choose W, and I'd like to configure W first. So I'm going to expand its dropdown, and for W, this will handle forward movement. So we're going to have a modifier on this one. We're going to choose swizzle input axis values, and we're going to leave it at the default YXZ so that when I press W, it's going to trigger the Y-axis of IA Move. The X and Z don't matter because a single axis for a two-dimensional input action is just a single value, which will go directly into that Y-axis. I'm going to click plus on IA Move again, click on the little keyboard icon, and choose S. When I press S, I want to move the opposite way, and I want this input to be in the Y-axis of our two-dimensional IA Move. So I'm first going to add a modifier and choose swizzle input axis values, again leaving it at its default settings. And I'm going to add another modifier, and this will be a negate modifier. And for this one, we don't have to uncheck any of these axes. We can leave them all checked. And this will result in a value of -1 in the Y-axis for IA Move when I press S. Now for A and D, we're going to go ahead and add another control binding. For this one, selecting the A key, and by default, input goes into the X-axis for a two-dimensional input action. And for A, we want to move to the left. So I don't need to swizzle input axis values, but I do want to negate. So I'm going to add a modifier and choose negate. And again, we don't have to uncheck any of the X, Y, or Z. We can leave it as is. And finally, we want to add one more control binding for the D key. So I'm going to select D. And this one already goes into the X axis, and we don't need to negate it, so it doesn't need any modifiers. So that takes care of the move input action. It's bound to WSAD. All we need to do is bind a callback function to each of these input actions, and we're going to set all this up in the player controller class, and we'll do that in the next video. So now we have our basic input mapping context for movement and our input actions associated with it. In the next video, we'll create our player controller and program basic movement. Great job, and I'll see you soon.